Now that the hull is done, we will focus the attention to the turret. Now this is going to be a very good example of not always, but a very good example of why it is wise and important to check references. As you can see from the commander's, the commander's hatch, it has these long bars on it. When I first saw that, I went, oh, I'm going to have to trim those off. But if you look at references on the actual M41, they are about this length. I don't know why they're that long, but they are on the real vehicle, so don't go trimming those down. Now, since we are going to replace this grab handle, so you can tell it's just a solid thing, we're going to replace it with some wire. We're going to remove it, and we're just going to use some side cutters. Cut it. Get our chisel to make sure that it is cut as flush as we can. Now I don't want any raised part since we're going to replace this with wire. But what I do want is, you can tell where the original grab handle was, and we're going to use that to drill the holes. Now we're not going to drill them until we have it glued into place. So we'll put this to the side and get the parts that we need, which are here, 10 and 11. Neighbor's out yelling at his dogs. Hopefully it won't be too loud. Now there's only one real way to put these on, so you don't worry about them, about you getting them mixed up for what goes where. The other thing on these, it's easy to tell, is the raised rivet detail goes on the outside. Now there are some ejector pin marks and such that we're going to remove or sand down some on both of these. Make sure the parts are all cleaned up and ready to be put on. You can do it without dropping it. It works even better. So I'll get these two parts cleaned up and we'll get back to putting it on. Okay. Okay now, y'all. Okay. Now that we have the parts cleaned up, we'll go ahead and put this on. I already have one in the turret. It's not glued in, just sitting there. Slide it in. Get this part to go where it's supposed to. I have it on backwards, of course I do. Let's put it on the right way. Now again, the way these go into the turret, they use little half circles, so you can't glue it in the wrong way unless you really want to. Now since we're not going to have this moving, we don't need to worry about getting glue in places that we shouldn't. So this is stiff. Go ahead and we'll put some glue in around the hatch. First, of course, we're going to do it off camera because I'm an idiot. We'll go ahead and get some glue around the hatch first because, again, we're not going to have this being positionable. So if it's glued, that works great for us because we don't want it moving. Now I'll come in and on the bottom on the inside you can see where the brackets are for the hinge. Put a little bit of MEK in there and then make sure they're seated and square for where they need to be. And when you're happy with it, come on the outside and add some more glue. And one of the things I tend to do is over glue. For whatever reason, I'm always afraid that it's not enough. So you don't need to use as much glue as I do, but there you have the commander's hatch on. We'll go ahead and close that for now. And so let's replace that grab handle with some wire. We're going to use some 26 gauge floral wire that is painted green. I like to use stuff that's already painted because generally speaking you worry less about primer and paint peeling off of metal. Now to drill the holes we're going to use some PCB drill bits that are carbide from Drill Bits Unlimited, which is where I usually get them. These are 0.35 millimeter and they are very thin, and since they are carbide they are very, very snappy. So you have to be careful when you use them, but they're very sharp, so you don't need to do any pressure really, but any lateral movement at all will snap the bit, so you have to be very careful. So we'll get our pin vise here, which is way too heavy, but it'll work for what we're doing. And this is a specially made pin vise for PCB bits. This particular one is brass with a carbon fiber swivel. And since it's brass, it's really heavy. Usually they're done out of aluminum. So we're going to use the mark from where we removed the original handle to guide us for where we're going to glue, or excuse me, where we're going to drill these holes. My bit is spinning off of where I want it, but almost no pressure at all. Spin, spin, spin. This hatch is kind of thick, that's one of the reasons it's taking so long now that we're through. And as you could hear, I snapped that bit. See how it's a lot shorter now? It's because when I went to pull it out, I tweaked it. Let me see if this stub will drill the back. Seems as if it is. One of the problems about these bits is that they are so snappy, but you can't really get the flutes any shorter than that. As you can tell, there is the bit sticking out. So what we'll do is try and extract that, grab it with some tweezers and pull. Luckily it came out. It's a problem if it sticks. So, oh, swivel came off the end. Quick, quick, surgery. Fixed. We'll use this little stubby bit, chase it out. I just snapped that one. If it snaps in a hole like that, one of the things that you can do, grab an airbrush needle and push and get it to come out. Now one of the not sticking out enough to grab. One of the things I didn't notice when I went to originally do this, I'm doing it originally now, when I went to do this, was you can see where that front grab handle is in the front of that hatch. That's one of the reasons it took so long to drill that hole. It's also one of the reasons it snapped. It's because I was trying to pull it out of something that was too thick and it had too much friction on it. Now, one of the things that, even though this is very good, these are probably the best drill bits you can use for plastic because they're just very easy, is it's a little bit smaller than this. I did not have a 0.4 drill bit, which probably would have worked better for this, because as it is now, the wire will not just fit into that hole. It's a little too, my finger's just slipping, a little too small. Again, this is when the airbrush needle comes in handy. You need to stick that in, push, twist, open up those holes some. You don't need to do too much. You don't want to do too much because you don't want to have an issue when you go to glue it. Now the front one, I'm going to have to come back from the bottom and push it out from the bottom too. Now this is an old, already bent needle, so don't do that with a new needle. That's just begging for problems. But now it fits into the back. I need to open up the back a little bit more. Still a little tight on the front. Come back with the needle. Try and open that up a little bit more. Going from the back side. Open them up. Because the problem when you go to open up these holes, especially if you're using something like an airbrush needle, it tapers the hole. So if it fits at the top, it may not fit all the way through. But you don't want to go too big because you don't want a big gap around the wire. So let's see now. Still not quite, but getting closer. Okay, so it fits through the front. And we want it to be a tight fit because we don't want a big gap around these. And it's fitting into the back. So what we'll do is, since we have a little bit of raised plastic on the top, come back with our chisel, remove that so we have clean holes, and then we want to go in and find the proper width for the grab handle and make sure we can bend it somewhat square. So I'm just going to use tweezers. I have a taper on them so I can figure out really what part to do the taper. So I measure it sort of with the tweezer. So you want it about there. Double check. Yeah, about there. 'Cause remember, when you bend the wire, it won't bend straight and perfect. It'll have a little bit of a radius to the edges, which is fine for what we want, as long as the top is relatively square. Double check it. That seems to be pretty good. We'll go ahead and trim it. And yes, I did use my regular side cutter so that this wire is thin enough. It's not really a problem. Come back with tweezers that let us hold it a little bit better, and drop it. Drop it again. It's being problematic because the holes weren't quite the right size. So once you have them started, try and just feed them in a little bit better. I'm going to go ahead and open these up a little bit more. Grab these with our tweezers again. And now we're able to push it through. The front needs to get pulled through a little bit more. And there it is. Now, it's not perfectly square right now, which is kind of a problem. So we'll pull the back up a little. Push the front back down. Not too much. And what we'll do is we'll glue it from the inside. You can tell it's not quite square enough. So we'll glue it from the inside, make sure it won't move. And then we'll just kind of push on that, and that should flatten the top without moving the sides. Now to glue the inside, what I'm going to do is use some of the Bob Smith medium gap filling super glue and our nail powder. You don't need to necessarily use the nail powder for this, but we'll let it set faster and be a little bit stronger. So since we have quite a bit sticking up and we're going to put a lot of pressure on this, we'll lay that down. Try not to let it move around too much, and then just put your powder in it. Shake it around. Move it. Make sure as much powder as we can gets into that super glue. Absorbs into it. You can come back with something that you don't need to keep and make sure it's sort of mixing. And you have enough of it around the wires. You move it around, shake it, a little shake, shake. If you need to, put a little bit more powder just to fill the parts of the glue you've exposed. Shake it, and that should be set up pretty good. Get rid of the excess, which didn't all come out doing that way. I also do a quick little blow in it to make sure the rest of it's up, and you can come back with your finger and still feel where it's kind of putty-like and where you're pushing up a little bit of glue. So just wait for that to set all the way, and then you'll be able to push down on this and make it square, and you'll be good to go. Now for the antenna, the parts on the sprue needed quite a bit of cleanup. They still kind of do. I'm not really happy with them. I'm tempted to just find a way to replace those with something. The problem is the lower part and how it is corrugated, textured, and whatever words you want to use. It's going to be hard to replicate that. The antenna themselves, that's easy. Just find small tubing the right size. But as for the bottom parts, there's still a little bit more cleanup that needs to be done. So while they're on the sprue still, try and get through each little gap to get rid of that mold or that seam from where the mold came together. And I was going with a knife, some wiggle it to make sure that's deep enough, and then you come back with a sander on the side and get it mostly taken care of. If I can find a good old UMP 220 sponge. It's going to be a pain to clean those up, but all we have left, clean those up, glue them on, get the grab handles cleaned up, glue them on. Now you could go through and replace all of these too, but I'm not going to. That's just too much work. And then get the machine gun ready. Now for the M2, where you are going to use a spare from the new Tamiya Sherman Easy 8, and we're going to use the kit bracket for it, which we've already cleaned up. Now for painting purposes, we will have this glued in. We're not going to glue the machine gun to it yet until after everything's painted and weathered. Then we'll attach it. But just clean that up, figure out what way you want the machine gun to sit on the turret, and then glue this down, glue the antenna, grab handles, glue the barrel in, and we're going to be ready for primer. So the next time you see this, we will be shooting primer. Thanks for watching. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. Hopefully you've learned something. Hopefully we can get through this without any more long delays. Again, sorry for the delays for these last two videos. Thanks for watching. See you later.